So yeah, we have to add a smooth, otherwise the extrude doesn't look as nice on the root position, so I always use it. Rooted version here is that you can get like these very pointy tips that you can't get with a linear interpolation otherwise. I'll also experiment more with the blur and a length node here to see if I can get some cleaner shapes. Now I will start introducing the clumps. It looks like there are some medium-sized clumps, level 2 clumps. So here my viewport is broken again, so I need to open up another one. I like to go back and forth between those two systems. Here I will push out my guide cursor a little bit more to get like a sharper tip. And I will also cut off the tip guide a little bit more to have like a better transition there between the shorter and longer hair. Sometimes the guide angle can give you like nicer or cleaner shapes, so you have to test that out if that works great for you. Yeah, I'm fixing more of the shapes. I feel like the reference has hair that is pointing more downwards, while mine is like pointing straight. Also, I'm not too happy with the intersecting hairs. So there's a lot of force from my hairstyle from coming from an upwards angle, and the other one is like straight intersecting with it. And yeah, I want to fix that. But yeah, here I'm trying to go for a more pinched look to get a sharper tip. If it's a static room, you could try to sculpt on the hair itself after the clump gen. But yeah, since I'm planning to simulate that, I want to keep the guide structure active, and I don't want to simulate the whole thing. We'll also try to add a little bit bend to give a little bit break off between the single hairs because it looked like quite linear. I mean, it's quite a linear look, but I think a little bit of break off doesn't hurt there. I will also try to have a look into like multiple clump levels. I'm also not so happy with the clump size. I feel like the reference has more variance. In general, I also did a test with the curling, but didn't like it in the end, so I cut it out. And here I will try to change the interpolation once more, see if I can come up with something better. It's quite difficult to match this very wispy ear groom. From the reference, it looks very natural, even in the reference. So I'm just trying to come up with a result that kind of looks alike. Most of the cases working with my groom is I am trying to put But yeah, I'm still wanting to test out more things in the guide groom. So I will use a separate guide groom. Take that out instead of just trying to follow the steps. And I'm trying to get rid of the crossing effect. Yeah, but yeah, it doesn't seem to add up a lot to it, so I will get rid of that again. Also have a go with fractal clumping. In this case, it helps a little bit more to sail the wispier shapes. I feel like the angle is slightly pointing more outwards than what I have in the reference, so I will try to fix it here. And with the blend, you can basically blend between those two modes. Always try to look at your camera from different cameras with different focal lengths. That's usually very helpful. I will add a out node for the guides and the out node for the skin itself. This is what we will need in order to ingest that into our main groom. Ideally, we want to combine that together in one groom. So we will go back into our hair, into our main hair, drag this out a little bit more. bring in the two out nodes that we just created, once the guides and second the skin. And then we will attribute transfer from the skin onto our guides, and we will transfer the active area that we will later on use as a split area. So we will just split off the areas that are affected by the active area, and we will have to, in order to bring this to the full primitive, we have to promote this to a primitive attribute. Right now it's stored as a point attribute. So let's just copy this name over and set it to primitive here, and you will be able to see it in the list. And now we can blast it off. We have to resample it because the ear is by far longer than what we have there right now. So I want to push this to a higher value, ideally like 30 to 50. 20 will do the trick. Depends how much noise we have in our groom. I will put this to linear, give it a ramp, and deactivate the only clump within existing clumps. Then we will connect this to the guides. And bring in our skin once again and connect this to the skin input. And then we will have to bring in our full ear groom in order to use that as guide curves. This is our full. To have a softer fade. And here you can see your interpolated result that lets you dynamically change the density even after the interpolation, and also lets you keep like hero clumps, or if you have a client and your client doesn't know what he wants, you can always exchange parts pretty easily. Here in the clump size, I would recommend you to test out a few values as well. It's very adaptive to the clump size in general. You can have a go at the settings here in order to blend it in further. The stray rate in order to interpolate stuff, because Houdini doesn't come with an interpolator on its own besides the hair generate. Yeah, I will just use this and see how it looks like with our first shader assign. Before I do that, I will group it in a nicely grouped container, so we can use the same container for a different region that we built. For example, for the cheeks that we will build later on, we will have the same active area attribute and the same clump node that we just adjust for the very specific room in this case. We'll also test how it looks like with blur in the active area, because I'm not too happy how it interpolates. It looks like there's a very harsh interpolation between the freshly generated guide system and our previous groom. The next steps will be to optimize that. With the blur, I kind of like the shapes, but it also tends to be shorter than previously. What I will do is I will fix this later on in our guide system. So here I will try to add a little bit of a break off because I can see that it looks too linear. For that I will use the randomized clump ID function. But basically what it does, it takes a clump ID and clamps it within the radius. That will give you more break off based on each clump. We'll also make it a little bit longer. And it complains that the guide skin attributes are missing. We'll dive back into here and see if everything is connected correctly, and I can see that I made a wrong connection there. Now I can delete it. And this is the result. Add some frizz too before it goes into the clump gen to have like more variation there. But be aware that when you increase the frizz, you also have to increase the curve samples. Otherwise, you won't get the same result. Here I also have to increase the segments. Otherwise, it will be quite different and difficult to blend them over. So I will add this little swirl there as well in the guides of the shorter system. I'm not happy with the little dot that we are getting at the tip at the moment, but in order to change that, we can adjust our density map, which we have to do anyways. If you check the references, the skin is quite visible there, so the density in general should be quite low. And in order to do that, we will change our density map later on. There's another way what you can do. I will just split off every 14th hair out of 15 and bring that to a higher value and see how that looks like. So I have a few hairs from the original system in there as well, which gives a very nice result. It looks like almost a couple of flyaways. taking from there. And I will try to bring that down a little bit, otherwise it will get too long. And here we will finally touch our density map that we have set up but never adjusted earlier on. And for stuff like this, the density map is very useful and should be used for. Here I like to take screenshots of how the hair looks like at the moment and then update it and see how it looks like with my latest updates. I will also include the density into the width value of the overall hair, so the width will also fade out based on the density. This is how our result looks like so far. I don't like the creases that are happening, so I will try to go over the guides once more to have a smoother interpolation there. And then it seems to have fixed it for its left ear, but not for the right ear. On the right ear, there's still something visible. But that was just the seat issue, so I changed the seat. I will also try to add more hair from the fur system itself and give it a smaller width value in general to have like a more wispier look of it. And 0.1 was too less, so I will try to do some tests with higher values as well. Sometimes it's helpful to already put this to a render engine at this stage and check if your values are correct.